afternoon. You're watching I-24 News Special Edition with breaking news about the passing away of former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon in the Sheba hospital at the age of 85. For 8 years, Ariel Sharon was in a permanent vegetative state since suffering a stroke on January 4, 2006. His condition worsened from late 2013, and Sharon suffered from kidney failure on January 1, 2014. His family and closest friends have been at his bedside this past week, bidding their final farewell. Sharon's stroke in 2006 occurred a few months before he had been expected to win a new election. Ariel Sharon served as Israel's 11th prime minister between 2001 and 2006, but he was a prominent and iconic figure long before that. Throughout the years, he was almost constantly in controversy, both in Israel and in the world. Here's a look into the life of one of Israel's greatest men.
Sharon, an assertive, strong-minded right-winger, was a prominent player in Israeli military and politics for decades. His life story goes hand in hand with Israel's history. His career as a protector of the Jewish state began at age 14, when he signed up for the Haganah, a militia guarding Jewish settlements in British-controlled Palestine. Sharon first distinguished himself during the 1948 War of Independence. In 1953, he created a legendary military unit known as Unit 101, a special branch of the Israeli Defense Forces focusing on retaliation strikes against Palestinian terrorism. By 1967's Six-Day War, Sharon rose to Major General in the Israeli Army. And after a short retirement from the military, Sharon returned to the ranks in 1973 to help protect the country during the Yom Kippur War. He led the turnaround that ultimately brought victory to Israel. But Sharon's influence in Israel extends beyond military ranks. After retiring from the military, Sharon helped create the right-wing Likud party. As Minister of Defense, he was responsible for building ties with several African nations and was accountable for the immigration of Ethiopian Jews to Israel. In 1982, Sharon led a controversial invasion of neighboring Lebanon, which he claimed was to expel PLO leader Yasser Arafat and his forces. But he was later cited for negligence during the war, after failing to prevent the massacre of Palestinian refugees at the hands of Lebanese militias, leading to his ousting as Minister of Defense in 1983. Sharon, marred by events in the First Lebanon War, remained in politics, and in 2001, after the beginning of the Second Intifada, he was elected Prime Minister. As a strong advocate of settlements, Sharon shocked Israelis in 2005 when he followed through with the disengagement, a leftist plan that displaced Israelis from their homes in the Gaza Strip and returned the lands to Palestinians. Sharon's years and influence in the Knesset came to an end in January of 2006, when he suffered a stroke that left him in a coma. He was replaced as Prime Minister by Ehud Olmert. Sharon remained in a vegetative state for 8 years. Ariel Sharon's legacy may be viewed differently by opposing sides, but one thing remains irrefutable. The former Prime Minister will always be remembered as one of Israel's most controversial yet beloved leaders.
And just a short while ago, Shlomo Noy, Director of Rehabilitation at the Tel HaShomer Sheba Medical Center, had the following things to say about Sharon's passing.
The Chaim Sheba Medical Center at Tel HaShomer announces in sorrow that former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon has passed away. His death was determined an hour ago. Mr. Sharon was treated for over 7 years in the Medical Center Rehabilitation Hospital. Throughout this period, he was considered to be in a state of minimal consciousness, with ups and downs in his medical condition and non-verbal minimal communication. The former Prime Minister overcame many medical complications during this period. Over the past week, he struggled with surprising strength and determination against the deterioration in his condition. Today, he departed peacefully with his loving family at his side. The Sheba Medical Center wishes to emphasize that throughout the period of Mr. Sharon's hospitalization, we worked in complete cooperation in the decision taken with the Sharon's family. This is the time and place to thank the medical staff of the Respiratory Rehabilitation Department, which cared for Mr. Sharon with professionalism, patience, and compassion, as the former Prime Minister surely deserved. May his memory be a blessing. Thank you.
That was Sharon Noy from the Sheba Medical Center following the passing away of the 11th Prime Minister of Israel, Ariel Sharon. Now joining us on the phone is Ruti Sinai, I-24 News correspondent, live from Tel Aviv for more insight. Hi, Ruti.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. Ruti,
Sure.
What kind of legacy has Ariel Sharon left behind?
Well, he was truly an incredible man. I mean, there's very few people who remained indifferent to him. There are those who loved him, admired him, and there are those who didn't. But he nonetheless, I think, formed both in terms of warfare and in terms of peace. He left a legacy, a rich legacy. In terms of peace, he really showed that one can turn around, and from being a general and a fighter and a sort of a hardliner in terms of political views, that one can turn around and make a huge difference in terms of withdrawing Israeli settlements from the Gaza Strip and withdrawing settlements from the northern part of the West Bank. This is, there are many people who are angry with him and view this as a betrayal. But I think for most, this is was a tremendous achievement, both in terms of his personal growth and in terms of what he did for the country, setting a precedent for perhaps future withdrawals from territory. And in general, proving that one can be a great man and still admit one was wrong. He was, on the one hand, the father or one of the great initiators of settlements in Gaza, and on the other hand, when the time came and he thought that they were no longer defensible and that it was for Israel's good to get out of there, he led this move. Against a lot of, anger and deep popular sentiment that was opposed.
Thank you, Ruti. What do you see the reaction is on the ground? And more importantly, who will fill his footsteps? Who will follow his footsteps and fill his shoes?
Well, he's really been gone for 8 years. We shouldn't forget. I mean, it's true that in terms of his heart's not beating anymore, that happened today, but he's really been gone from the scene for 8 years. And I think what's been clear in those 8 years that he doesn't have, or he didn't have, a successor, at least not so far. Not somebody who was willing to be as bold in terms of his political moves and I don't think he was indifferent to the criticism that he received for what he did, but I think he was a leader in the sense that, a true leader in the sense that despite criticism and despite political downfall, because, don't forget, he had to leave the Likud and leave behind a lot of his political cronies in order to set up a new party and that would allow him to do what he did in withdrawing from Gaza. So he was very brave in that sense, and I don't see anybody that has succeeded him in the 8 years that have passed since
Thank you,
then.
Ruti. Thank you for that insight. Ruti Sinai, I-24 News correspondent. Now, tributes to the former prime minister have begun to pour in across the Israeli political spectrum, with current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calling Sharon first and foremost a brave warrior and general and one of the greatest commanders of the Israeli Defense Forces. Well, this was a special edition of I-24